Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to IAEE's October annual meeting and not luncheon this time. We are very excited to have Cathy Breden as our speaker today, but first we want to go through a couple of housekeeping annual meeting kind of things to let everybody know what is going on in the world of IAEE DC chapter. So the first thing to let everybody see is our sponsors. We want to thank everybody who has sponsored this year. These are our annual sponsors. We have ASP on our website. We have CVent for registration, and we have EPNAC for photography, and MDG does our newsletter, and our administration is handled by MAR Meeting Management. State of the chapter financials. This year we have not had a lot of financial income, obviously, in revenue because of COVID and all the things that are involved in it. So we haven't had any income from registrations since March. Our current value is $72,000 with $43,000 in cash. And we have quite a bit in accounts receivable that we are going back and looking into. A lot of that is sponsors, and as you know, our suppliers are not doing as well as they expected. So there is planned to be some revenue coming in over time with the suppliers that we have outstanding. But we're healthy, we're good, we're doing fine. We'd also, because of the things that are creating bad financials for income, are also, we're not expending any money on our luncheons.
Paula, just a note, I think you need to bring your PowerPoint back over. Just seeing the blue screen. Yeah.
Got it. There we go. Okay, so sorry about that. Okay, so $72,000 what we have, and our assets are comfortable. We just need to get the revenue of the outstanding receivables, which currently are at $23,000, and we're working on that. Next is the programs, 2020 programs update. We had a great year before it. Well, actually, even our virtual events are doing really, really well. We have had 5 so far amazing events, and we've had 523 registrants. And we're going to work on figuring out, we did do a survey for you guys. I'm sure a lot of you responded. We had 98 responses, and quite a few people are interested in going back to live events. So we're going to look at the possibilities for November. We're not really sure just yet how that will work, but we will keep you guys informed. We're going to do probably a hybrid, so those that are not comfortable doing live events have an opportunity to still be involved. But we will let you guys know as that happens, because we're not really sure yet how that's going to go or where we're going to have it. So that'll come in time. Next, our upcoming program, like we mentioned, is in November. It's November 13th, Friday the 13th. And that more details will be coming out. And next, we also have Expo, of course, December 8th through the 10th in Louisville. And you can register at IAEE. And we have the DC chapter reception that will be held at Expo, and that is at the Omni Louisville Hotel. And once we get our room assignment, we will let you guys know that as well. That is sponsored by Fern, and we continue to appreciate their sponsorship for that DC chapter reception. We also have scholarships. We every year are provided 3 scholarships to Expo, and if you're interested in getting those scholarships, you would go on to IAEEDCchapter.com and you will find the application to do that. It will be available Monday, October 12th. Marketing and communications update. As you can see, you're always getting everything from us, email or on Twitter, and in Facebook and LinkedIn. We continue to have a lot of information going out, especially right now with the changes in the world. Please make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms. Coming soon will be Member Monday. I'm first. There's my picture. And we're going to start highlighting members, reminding everybody that we're still out there, even though we're virtual and we can't network. So that will be coming every Monday, and each Monday we're going to have somebody new. I think we're starting with the board members, and then you're going to go into actual members that are outside of the board. So don't be surprised if somebody reaches out to you. Sponsorships. Again, our suppliers are the ones that we usually rely on for sponsors. We are looking for sponsors for all things that come through us, including annual sponsorships for things like what Federal Conference did for us today, sponsorships for our programs, all things that we can do to help the financial health of our organization. We do appreciate everyone who has sponsored so far and chooses to sponsor in the future. And we also appreciate the volunteers because your time has a lot of value as well. Community services, we've done really well this year. The chapter raised $1,190 for Capital Area Food Bank. And we have raised $517 for the Michael J. Fox Foundation, which was my chair charity. For those of you that don't know, the Mid-Atlantic Champs has been created as a coalition between IAEE, AMPS, MPI, PCMA, NatCap, which is the Society for Government Meeting Planners, and RHMP, Rest and Herndon Meeting Planners Association. This coalition was created to bring people together that are a part of each of those individual organizations locally and haven't had the opportunity to get to know what the other associations are doing. In this very uncertain time, we're trying to make sure that everybody, whether employed, furloughed, laid off, has access to the information from all of us without needing to join these organizations. We are on LinkedIn. Under Mid-Atlantic Champs. I recommend everybody connect to us. It's going to be something, it's a work in progress. The press release is out there explaining a little bit about what we do and what our intent is, but we really, the whole purpose of it is to connect people who feel disconnected from our industry right now, which is obviously very much hurting. So if you have questions about it, please feel free to reach out to me, contact us on LinkedIn. It's kind of a really neat thing that we thought we would do for our industry in the DC area. Next is our 2021 slate. The nominating committee came out and the board has approved the 2021 slate. Executive committee will be chair is Donna, and vice chair will be Rob Hamlin, secretary Claudia Maurer, treasurer Mark Shadwick, and immediate past chair is myself. The directors, programs, content is Jen Ellick, program logistics, Lisa Williams, special events, Abdi Abdallah, sponsorships, Phil Sames, marketing, Karen Vogel, communications and outreach, Jessica Finnerty, community services, Nina Dadgar, and young professionals is Austin Kappa. We will be sending out that slate for your vote today, I believe, after this meeting, and we would need that to come in by the November meeting. So please, everybody, if you can vote as quickly as you can, that will help us to approve the slate and get it moved forward for 2021. We're very excited and we thank everybody for volunteering to take on these positions. Every one of us is a volunteer. Our time is precious and we appreciate everyone's ability and volunteer to be a part of this organization, which we continue to be healthy and in good shape. Now we get on to Cathy. We appreciate Federal Conference for providing us the platform, which is Pathable, and their time and back-end help on creating this. We're very excited to bring this forward. We have Cathy Breden, who is CMP, CAE, CEM, lots of letters after her name. She is the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of IAEE. She's the CEO for Center for Exhibition Industry Research, which is CEIR, and she is here today to tell us a little bit about what's going on in our industry and what's happening in the future. Cathy, thank you for being here.
Thanks, everybody. Such a wonderful chapter. Love seeing that you have scholarships available for the annual meeting. I'll have some information as well of some financial assistance for especially the organizers. So, you know, again, thank you very much for having me today. And I will go ahead and share my screen now. Right. Okay. So again, thank you so much for having me. I'm going to run through and give you some information on what IAEE is doing, and then run into SEER and what we're seeing with the exhibitions industry, and then also run through some insights from the Exhibitor Media Group, who is doing pulse polls of corporate marketers, as well as through some of the Harris Insights findings. We had partnered with Harris Insights, the Harris poll, in April and again in September, in showing some information from their pulse polls. So we'll go through that. And so first off, you know, I know you have been receiving a lot of call to actions from us. This is just, you know, some of the groups that we work very closely with, the Exhibitions Mean Business campaign. You will now see another piece of information coming out next Tuesday. You know, certainly we have been pushing for the HEROES Act, and as you know, everything is just stalled in DC right now, and it's very disheartening. Everybody from US Travel to Go Live Together to all of us who are really advocating really hard right now to try and get some financial relief, especially for the 501c6 organizations, of which many destination marketing organizations, as well as associations, including IAEE, we were not eligible for that Paycheck Protection program. And so we are really advocating really very heavily. Go Live Together has engaged a lobbying firm that is one of the most prominent ones in DC, as well as US Travel, and working through them. And, you know, as you know, I mean, the impact of our industry is just crazy. 6.4 million jobs rely on live events, and 1.7 million exhibitors. And, you know, just the amount, the 700 billion that's generated in sales. And if you just look at this slide, it just really, you know, speaks to the importance of our industry. And one of the things that we have found is that, you know, historically we've worked through US Travel for our advocacy needs, in conjunction with, you know, certainly the American Hotel Lodging Association. So we kind of bring in these different coalition groups to help us. But this was such a devastating event this year with this pandemic, that we had to form our own coalition, the Go Live Together coalition, and really focusing on raising the awareness with our congressional representatives in DC, even though we've had Exhibitions Day for 7 or 8 years now. And when we walk into the office every year now, into these offices in June of every year, they do recognize us. It's primarily their staff, but we've got to build some deeper relationships there, so that when we pick up the phone and say that we need to speak to Senator McConnell, for instance, he'll take our call. So working really, really hard on that. A couple of things of what the board has done. The board decided that we would freeze all of the positions through 2021, just to add a level of continuity to the board, just because of, you know, everything that's been going on. Mary Bender was nominated to serve a 3-year term on the board, and so we expanded the board to 17. We set aside the bylaws for a year so that Mary could go on the board as a voting director. And then I think one of the things that's really important to the DC chapter is that we understand the impact that this has had on so many people's lives through layoffs and furloughs. And so member representatives who were employed by a member organization in good standing as of March 1, and who are no longer employed by that organization, they're eligible for a transitional membership meaning all of the benefits and rights except for voting, through June of next year. And then those organizations who did not renew due to COVID, their staff still has access to webinars that IAEE produce through March of next year. And certainly we've been producing a lot of webinars to meet the needs of our members. Expo, we are planning on being there. We're planning on being there live. We have instituted a no risk guarantee. Registration for the live event is $499 and for members and $799 for non-members. If you are an organizer and you need financial assistance, and if you want to be a hosted buyer, we've increased the stipend to $750. That's for your travel and your hotel, and then we comp you the registration fee. There is no fee to attend the show only portion, and for first time attendees it's $299. And then for the hybrid, it's $299 for members and $499 for non-members. We have, like 24 sessions at the live event and 60 sessions for the hybrid event, very short sessions. The no risk guarantee says that through November 30th that your money can be refunded or switched back and forth between the hybrid and the live event. And then we are getting ready to issue our second version of the essential considerations for safely reopening. Areas of enhancement include a new section on insurance considerations, something that's very important. Also on travel considerations, and then new FAQs throughout the paper. And then there will be also new content on force majeure in the legal section, and also enhanced risk assessment sections. So also we'll have additional updates in there from EDPA, the Experiential Designers and Producers Association, ESCA, the contractors, as well as GBAC. So speaking of GBAC, we were able to create a partnership with the International Sanitary Supply Association. And as you know, many venues, and not just venues, but hotels and airports are all working to become GBAC Star accredited. They do have a program for individuals called GBAC Trained Technician. And I actually have put through 3 staff, another person is going to be going through the program. So IAEE members get the member rate that ISSA charges, and that's $150. So, you know, I encourage you to consider going through this program. I think especially if you do any type of floor management work, that would be something that would be very important for you to consider taking the course. And so with that, I will pause and see if anybody has any questions.
Cathy, we had a question that came in about the CEM recertification credits for the hybrid event. Since the sessions are shorter, would those still count?
Yeah, sessions still count. You know, you can take, you don't have to apply like a full hour, if you will. And as you probably know, shorter sessions in a live, in a virtual environment are usually shorter just because of people's attention span. So if the course is 45 minutes, then you would just count those 45 minutes.
Thanks. That's what we have at this time.
Okay, perfect. All right, so then I figured that I would switch over to the Center for Exhibition Industry Research, give you an idea of what it is that we're seeing. For those of you that attended the Predict conference, this is going to be some repeat material, but you know, still always good to see. And I'll have to say that some of the information is going to be disheartening, and but there's also good news in here as well. So as we go through, I don't want this to like end your Friday on a down note, because we are seeing some good signs. One of the things I do want to say is that we are going to do our raffle and silent auction again this year. And everything's going to be online this year. We're not going to be selling raffle tickets, but The package is valued at about $1,900, includes round-trip transfer from the airport, 3-night stay, you know, lots of tours and things like that, as well as registration to the annual meeting. So this would, you know, essentially cover you once you get to Louisville. We are going to be very strict. We've had a lot of calls with the convention center there, as well as health officials, and you know, certainly we'll have GBAC there, GBAC representatives there, because we're going to be using Expo as a use case of how to hold an event in a safe environment. So the website for the SEER raffle and silent auction will be up next week, hopefully by Wednesday of next week. And, you know, if there are any items that you might want to donate to the silent auction, you know, certainly we would welcome them. We paused all of our fundraising. Yeah, I'm personally responsible for raising $180,000 a year to help cover research. And this year we stopped everything. So we certainly are in need of funds to make sure that we can continue doing the great research that SEER does. So running into the SEER index report, you may recall the SEER index report, if you've heard my little spiel here, it goes back to the year 2001, measuring the economic performance of the industry by 14 different sectors. And then there's a forecast 3 years out. And we measure net square feet, number of exhibitors, professional attendance, real revenue, and that is what we call the total index. So typically this report is released in April of every year. We made the decision pretty quickly in March when we saw what was going to happen that, you know, we needed to delay the index to be released in September. And then of course, you know, what were we going to do? Because no shows have been held, it was going to be really difficult to do any type of forecast. So we decided not to produce the report this year, which is good. So this is just a page out of the index that shows the building construction and home repair sector, and you know, and the performance back to, I believe it's 2007 or so. And you can certainly see the impact of the recession here on the index and the performance of the industry. We do have a couple of tools that I want to let you know about. One is the Event Performance Analyzer, and we are going through testing right now of an enhanced analyzer that will provide more tables and more information downloadable so that you can either fill the form out on the analyzer or put it in an Excel sheet and upload it to the analyzer. And then what you'll get is tables that shows you can compare your show to that industry sector overall and receive different types of figures. And then there will be additional figures that you can purchase for additional money that have not ever been available before. So hopefully we're going to release this next Wednesday, but next week will be busy. And then Nancy Drapeau, our VP of Research, is planning on doing a webinar at the end of this month. And one of the ways that we use this information is to help feed data into the index. It's very important that we are able to secure show data on different shows. We've been asked, well, it doesn't drill down far enough. Well, if we had enough show organizers that submitted their data where it wasn't just one show or two shows within a sector or a subsector specifically, we would be able to drill down a lot more. So I really do encourage you, implore you to all the organizers to please complete the analyzer. And then we also partnered with Personify, formerly A to Z, on exhibitor benchmarking tools. And it's updated on a quarterly basis by Personify, and you can look at the number of exhibitors. You can plug in your numbers and compare it against A to Z's numbers. And They have, I think, 1,000, 1,100 shows in their database, and they so the information that spits back out it's helpful. And then you can also look at your net square feet as well. So I'm going to pause there for a moment and see if there are any questions.
Yeah, so Cathy, we had a question about submitting your show data for SEER and how that works.
So you can either use the Event Performance Analyzer to submit your data, or I can send you a form that you can complete, and then it can be uploaded to the analyzer. You know, ideally it would go through the analyzer, but every quarter we go out and we start asking the show organizers to submit their data. And so we've got some really good relationships with like Informa and Diversified. More of the for-profits, you know, do submit their data to us. We would love to have the associations. The information is held confidentially. It is never released. We never sell that data. We would never give that data away. It's held very securely, and it is only released in the aggregate, which is one of the reasons why we're not able to drill down as far as we would like, as I said, because we don't want any one show's information to be recognizable. It's all released in the aggregate. And if you do submit the data, then what I do is when the index is released, I send, not me personally, but I send a copy of the overall analysis as well as the analysis, the chapter for your sector. And so that's the incentive to do it. And we do webinars throughout the year to help you understand, okay, now that you have this information, how do I use it? And so we do webinars. We also will do, if anyone is interested, you know, of your staff, if you have any junior staff and you want them to understand the research and its value, we're happy to do a short webinar with your staff to help them get trained to understand how to use the data that SEER produces.
Thank you, Cathy. And we did have another quick note about SEER, and that the Terrence Donnelly Memorial 5K will happen.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, virtually this year on December 9th during Expo. And again, all proceeds will go to SEER. So just to note that everybody better get their running shoes on and start training now, or walking to the bar maybe. So.
Yeah, I saw in your cover photo, I saw Terrence right there smiling, and it's still so hard to believe that he's no longer with us. He was a special person.
Yes, we will recognize him though. Yes.
So here we are in the roaring 20s, and I'm not talking about 1920, right? I mean, who would have ever figured that we would have to deal with something like this, right? It's just crazy what you know, this has brought to us. So while I mentioned that we did not release the SEER index report, we did do an analysis of 2019 and how the industry performed. And overall, it performed pretty well with sustaining year-over-year growth rate of 1.4%, which was in line with what our economist, Dr. Shaw, had forecasted. And as I mentioned, we dived down into the 14 different sectors to see how they performed and what's going on. The industrial heavy machinery sector performed the best with 6.9% growth. And, you know, this is a really good indicator. When this sector does well, these are the groups that are, you know, they're needing to learn, they looking for new equipment and things like that. So it's always good to see this sector performing well. Business services have been on a secular downturn for a number of years. So we were quite pleased to see that the shows in this sector, that it did pretty well. And then the sporting goods and travel as well has been one that has struggled a little bit, and it performed very well. That's all the, you know, the outdoor hiking, all that type of stuff. And then the food sector also performed very well. And as you can imagine, you know, with all of the new food options and healthy eating and vegan and things like that, it's really bolstered that sector. Some of the other sectors that we look at, the building, construction, home and repair, we look at that sector very closely as to the health of the economy. And then we also look at raw materials and science. That's what we call it's the oil and gas industry. And certainly that industry has struggled. And then the consumer goods and retail trade, you know, that's the whole online shopping, Amazon effect. These financial, legal, and real estate and consumer goods and retail trade has also been in a secular downturn for a number of years. So I was in China at the end of January, attending a conference in Nanning. And I was at this beautiful Lian resort in Nanning, which sounds like it's, you know, majestic or whatever, but it wasn't really, you know, it wasn't what we would consider to be a resort here in the US. But, and I saw these black swans, and I had never seen a black swan before. And not only was there one, but there was two there. But, you know, as you may know that, you know, black swan is a metaphor for an event that comes as a surprise, you know, and has a major impact, and then, you know, rationalized after the fact, you know, and we're seeing that right now, right? Well, I just never dreamed that, you know, coming back through, flying into Nanning through Shanghai, David, my boss, had flown to Wuhan and had met me in Nanning. So, you know, little did we know what was to come, and it was shortly after that period of time when we returned that, you know, this mess began. And so this is what happened in the first quarter of this year. Fortunately, some of the shows were able to get off the ground, but we did see a drastic decline. It's not something that I have ever seen in the index, where net square feet declined, you know, 15%, exhibitors 16, attendees 15, and real revenues 14. And then the total index declined by 15%. So I have never seen this in all of my years of having worked with Sears since 2006. So, you know, this was, you know, devastating, as we all know. And then the other point to point out is that if the pandemic had not happened, and excluding cancellations, the year-over-year percent change would have been right in line with our forecast of 0.3%. SEER had been forecasting that we would have slowing growth moving into 2020. 2019 was the first year that we had gotten back to the point where we were before the Great Recession, which was, you know, 10 years ago. It took the industry 4 years to recover from the recession in 2001. So the Great Recession was tough on the industry. And so we'll be looking at some of our forecasts for recovery this time around. Historically, there has been a big correlation between GDP and gross domestic product and the performance of the exhibition industry. GDP growth tends to lead the exhibition performance, and you can see in 2019 GDP growth year over year change was 2.2% compared to our industry of 1.4%. And you can certainly see the, you know, the impact of that Great Recession back in 2008, 2009. Well, this time, obviously, this relationship has been totally disrupted. You'll see that that in Q2 there was a dip of no shows being held, so it was 100% decline versus real GDP growth of declined by 9.1%. And then looking at Q3, decline forecast of 96.5% and Q4 93%. These numbers were as of September 15th or so, and I do anticipate that these figures that were forecasted are probably going to go down as well. So many shows are struggling to get off of the ground and just really having a very difficult time doing it. But I think it's very important that we all keep in mind that this economic downturn is very unique from what happened in the Great Depression, as well as the Great Recession of 2008, which both of those were demand shocks, whereas this recession is being fed by the stay-at-home orders and lockdowns and inabilities of being able to congregate in large numbers. Also, low productivity of employees, the layoffs, and certainly mortality. So it's important, I think, to note that this is very different from what was experienced in the previous recession and the Great Depression. So that's kind of the good news. And then looking at this, 4 scenarios for a fast changing environment, and just walking you through this, there's a best case, base, stress, and worst case. And looking at when new COVID cases are confirmed, is there going to be a second wave in October and November? I am seeing that the rates are going up, which is not good for us. If we have a vaccine by Q2 of 2021, then it would be widely distributed, estimated, Q4 2021. And you'll look at what the GDP growth is forecasted to be between 2020 and 2021. And, let's just go with the worst case. So, and then the worst case, the small shows might be able to get off the ground in the first quarter of next year, and large shows in 2022. Very troubling news, but we as an industry feel that if the football can come back, and with some states allowing visitors into the stadiums, that we ought to be able to hold exhibitions and hold them safely in some format. So that's one of the things that we will be advocating very strongly for. And then looking at, what type of recovery there's going to be, we believe that the best case for recovery of the economy, it would be a V case, but we'll have to see. And this shows, based on real GDP, we are forecasting a V-shaped recovery. And Alex Chazowski, who spoke at the SEER Predict conference, he had indicators. 11 of 12 are in the positive position. And usually what happens is that when 5 of the 12 indicators that they track, when they follow, when that is in the positive, then it's a tipping point for a positive, for positive growth. And so we believe that, we're poised for a recovery if we are able to get a vaccine or rapid testing. And we are really counting on rapid testing. IAEE is planning on having rapid testing at Expo, so that people will feel comfortable in knowing that the people who are there have tested negative for COVID. And then looking at the industry recovery, we converted real GDP in 2012 into an index just like the SEER total index. And you will see here the SEER total index and how far it has plunged and compared to GDP. And when we are forecasting a recovery, this is based on historically exhibitions, B2B exhibitions, tracking closely with GDP. So, but still lots of unknowns, right? So right now I am going to pause and see if there are any questions.
Yeah, there was a question on the base case. If large shows don't start until Q3 of 2021, how can 2021 still be only off a bit from 2019?
Yeah, so that's kind of a, that's kind of an average, and I think that it is, if the if those shows will be able to be held in that last quarter of 2021. So it's an average of, it's an average is what it is.
Thank you.
Okay. So then moving on, we did a pulse poll. We've done 2 pulse polls. This one was back at the end of June, I believe. And you know, the extent of the impact on the portfolio, and we all know that we've all struggled to get events off of the ground. So really difficult, but reasons why, you know, forced to cancel. Certainly, I think we are all being impacted by those corporate no travel policies, and you know, and participants having to fly into the event. So we are seeing, you know, possibly some opportunities there for smaller, more regional shows. But certainly, you know, we're in a very unknown position right now, and it's really hard. It's really hard to forecast, but we are hopeful and looking at whether postponed events have a hybrid or virtual backup. Now, again, this was back in June, late June, July. So lots of organizers did pivot over to, you know, of a hybrid / virtual, and also having one, you know, just in their back pocket in the event that they needed to. But certainly, you know, virtually all of the shows, you know, between, you know, March and now, with just a few, you know, in smaller cities, smaller shows have not been able to be held. And then the revenue outlook, in terms of virtual events, you know, I think we've all struggled on, you know, how to monetize that. And there is an average fee, and I forgot what it is, but the Association for Training Development did have an average fee of what to charge for a virtual. And but based on this survey, the average that was being charged was $349, and the median, which is what I like to focus on, is more around $300. So, you know, certainly I think we're all learning together. I don't think any one of us are experts in, you know, holding these virtual events. And then whether selling virtual booths or sponsorships, you know, certainly 73% are selling sponsorships, and the virtual booth fee on average is 53% of a standard 10x10 booth. And sponsorship fees, the average is $6,200, and the median is $5,000. So, you know, again, I think we're all learning together as we go. I don't think any one industry organization could certainly, you know, be able to forecast what had eventually happened. And then the likelihood of continuing digital or virtual offerings in 2021. 3/4 indicated that it is likely or very likely that they'll continue with these offerings. Certainly in this period of uncertainty, it's the safe thing. It's the safe thing to do. You know, I think that and I'd love to have a conversation around this, you know, will this continue after this crisis ends with COVID-19? Is the digital virtual, is that going to continue? I'm not paying any attention to the chat, but I would love to hear from all of you about that. So what are some of the strategies, the tactics and strategies that are being undertaken right now? You know, certainly, you know, being able to pivot and having a virtual / hybrid type of plan, similar to what IAEE has for Expo. You know, another option, even though it's a smaller percentage, is co-locating with another event. And then there were 3% that answered this survey that said that they were abandoning the face-to-face model entirely. I'm hoping that won't be the case, and then organizationally, you know, certainly the disruption with all of the layoffs and furloughs and, you know, certainly the impact to the suppliers, the contractors has been just absolutely devastating. A lot of organizations had not purchased cancellation insurance for pandemics. Fortunately, IAEE did have and does have a policy in place, but it's not something that we want to do. And especially, I think, for associations that did not have a healthy reserve, you know, they really count on the revenue that's generated from that show. It's really very difficult for everyone right now, and certainly I think we're seeing that through the layoffs. So I will pause here and see if there are any questions.
You can move on. We don't have any questions right now.
Okay. So then at the Predict conference, we had John Gerzema, who's the CEO of the Harris Poll. The Harris Poll goes back to the time in the early 60s with the Kennedys and doing pulse polls on you know, what was going on back then. And so it's been around a very long time. John Gerzema is a great guy. It's the second time that we've had him at the SEER Predict conference. And he's always giving us some really great insights. So looking at this and the expectations rising for online events and lead gen, knowledge transfer, and networking, the question was asked, now think about business events held in person and held online. And then for each of the following aspects of business events, what's your expectation of an in-person event versus an online event? And they did this poll for us in April and again in September. And you can see that, you know, in-person event, you know, certainly leads for lead generation, which is, you know, really good for us, as well as for knowledge transfer and networking. So all the way down, you know, certainly the in-person event is much more valued than the online event, which us in face-to-face marketing, it's a good thing to see. And then virtual business events are making progress, however, but less people today say lack of connection experiences and tech glitches pose challenges to online events. So people are becoming a little bit more accustomed to the online events, but, you know, certainly the lack of personal connections, you know, maintaining distance for long periods of time. I know, you know, when I'm on some of these, I get up and walk away and come back, and so it's hard to hold my attention. You know, and one down at the bottom there, less access to executives and other SEER studies that we've done. We have seen that that's one of the high values of trade shows, is being able to have access to those executives who are there that you normally would not have access to. So certainly seeing that show up. And then attendees are increasingly looking for interactive expert sessions and human MCs and individualized content from virtual business events. So the question was asked, which of the following would you be interested in future online business events you might attend? You know, certainly interactive, ask me anything type of questions was highly rated. Content ambassadors, one-on-one meetings, you know, just all the way down, just gives you a perspective of what might be of interest. But still, and there are a couple down there toward the bottom, personalized content powered by AI. IAEE will be using SwapCard, and SwapCard does have an AI component. I don't know about the other platforms, but I do know because we are using SwapCard. But certainly, you know, being able to suggest sessions based on a person's demographics that the organizer has already been collecting. And we have said that AI was coming all along, where we would eventually be able to suggest different education for individuals based on their position and what they have done in the past with the organization. So, you know, that is one of the things that I think is positive out of an online event. And then I just did a webinar yesterday with Randy Aker, who's the CEO of Exhibitor Media Group. They're the ones that have all of the exhibitors. And IAEE does have scholarships for the exhibitor show if that's something that organizers are interested in. Unfortunately, it's just organizers. But, you know, sales and marketing, that job is very difficult right now. The online platform is just, they're having a very difficult time of, you know, getting the sales leads that they normally would get from the live event, and building the relationships. And a lot of new products have been held back, and they just don't feel like that they're increasing their brand awareness. So, you know, this all bodes well for live events. And then what long-term changes do you anticipate the trade show industry will experience? And certainly more virtual or hybrid events. I think, you know, many of us will continue perhaps to have, you know, some type of hybrid event. Certainly cleaning and sanitizing measures, which goes back to the importance of venues obtaining the GBAC accreditation, the STAR accreditation, as well as having your staff trained in GBAC sanitary measures. Lower show attendance is being anticipated, wider aisles, as well as a shift from large events to smaller regional events. This is from the exhibitor side of what they may be looking for. And then what long-term changes do you anticipate the trade show industry? So this was a question that was asked of exhibit managers, so those who manage the exhibit, as well as the vendor, the suppliers to the exhibitors. And you'll see that, you know, the exhibit manager, you know, certainly looking at more virtual hybrid events, also very interested in cleaning, sanitizing measures, which tells us that when our events do come back, we need to have a very strong plan in place for making sure that people are feeling comfortable about being there. So just again, some insights for you to consider. And you can follow, if you are not following the Exhibitor Media Group or the Exhibitor Show, you know, I do suggest that you do that, because, you know, especially as organizers, we need to have an understanding of what our exhibitors, what the pain points are for our exhibitors. And the Exhibitor Media Group and the Exhibitor Show specifically, they have, like, I don't know, 1,000 education sessions over 4 or 5 days. The event's usually held in March in Las Vegas. They were not able to hold it this year, but it's a great show if you want to better understand what the needs are of your exhibitors. And which stakeholders do you believe should pay for additional safety measures? So, you know, 70% said that the organizers should pay for the additional safety measures, where they believe, however, that they're going to be the ones that are going to be hit with the bill. So I just suggest that you take this into consideration, that, you know, in order for face-to-face to come back, that people really do need to feel safe, and making people feel safe costs money. So it's going to take a while for us to recover until we can get out of this pandemic. And then if COVID ended today, how long would it take your company to get back to business as usual? And, you know, I was surprised. I thought that this would be a little bit longer. One of the first groups that really need to be ready are those builders, the producers of the actual booths, to get them ready for shows, especially with new protocols that might be in place. So, you know, while us on the organizer side, we have our own set of challenges, we have to always keep in mind, well, what are our exhibitors experiencing? And then this is another slide that shows, given your current plans, when do you anticipate your company exhibiting at a live event? And you'll see that it looks like that it's, Q2 of 2021 is where we may see where people begin to feel comfortable, companies begin to feel comfortable in coming back to live events. But certainly, I think that, and I'll show it in a moment, that there's a consequence to these exhibitors not being able to exhibit. And this also reinforces that as of September, 85% of the companies that responded to this survey said that they do have travel bans in place. And it's the liability concerns, right? And the risk managers and lawyers, they need to be convinced that it's safe. So it's going to be very important for us as organizers and venues to make sure that we have protocols in place to make sure that they feel safe in attending. And they said that travel restrictions, 36% think that they'll expire sometimes in 2021, but 44%, they just, there's just no way of knowing because we don't know what's going to happen with this pandemic. And I think this is a good sign, though, when the question was asked, what percentage of respondents indicate their C-suites have a greater understanding of face-to-face marketing? You can see that's increasing, between June and September, it's gone up a percentage point. But, what these companies are doing is they're really struggling and trying to figure out, what can they do to meet their sales and marketing goals. And as you can see from the previous slide, it wasn't necessarily coming from that virtual event. They don't feel that they're getting that same impact as they would at a live event. When going back to my whole black swan, and, if you've seen these presentations that I've done or Nancy has done or even David, that GES sponsored a study back in 2017 about exhibitors' appetites for new models. And you'll see that hybrid trade shows were mentioned, as well as shows that offer a broader geographic representation of target markets. And that's one of the things that virtual trade shows can do, right? Because it's going to be those people that don't typically attend, but they can certainly attend a virtual event, and it might expand, especially the international participation. But smaller, more personalized and curated shows, I think, is an opportunity that we aren't really focusing on too much right now. But even though they did say that the exhibitor said that they're interested in smaller, more regionalized events. So all things to be to keep in mind. So, this is, I like tranquility. I mean, I like change, and, I like trying to figure things out, but, certainly we're all in this together and trying to figure it out together. How do our associations, how do our organizations survive what has been such a devastating situation? So certainly we're all in this together, and we're all learning this together. So I don't think any one association that is within the exhibitions and events space has the answer. Doing a lot of collaboration with a lot of different organizations, because this is all new territory for all of us. So some of the recommendations that I, just having gone through what I've gone through over the last several months, certainly planning a hybrid option to give participants choice. And, certainly that is something that a hybrid option, I think, is probably here to stay. But, as we know, these hybrid options are not inexpensive. And so even though we know that, people are becoming a little bit more familiar with hybrid options, and, certainly our exhibitors, they don't know how to create a virtual booth, or, so that requires a lot more. But I think that it's going to, hybrid is probably going to be here to stay. And, one of the early things that in the days when we were looking at planning Expo is, you know, we started out planning it like it was going to be a replication of the live event, and very quickly realized that if it's a virtual event, then you can't plan it the same way that you would have planned your live event. You have to think like a media planner and start with the design of a hybrid event first, is at least what I have found. Exhibitors and sponsors are new at this, just like all we are, and creating engagement, I have found has been difficult. And certainly, you know, one of the things that we have always focused on is the attendee numbers, but I think that it's time to really focus more on the quality of the buyer and making sure that you have that demographic information. Certainly consider holding smaller regional events or collaborate with another event. I think that, you know, becoming GPAC technician trained and designate some of your floor managers as safety officers. Understanding your market sector and certainly understanding, you know, what your exhibitors are going through. And one of the things that Alex Jazowski said at the SEER Predict conference was that interest rates are very low, and if your organization, you know, can afford it, it might be time to look for investment. So, you know, certainly the for-profit independent organizers who you know, acquire shows or create some type of partnership with organizations, is that an opportunity if your association is really hurting and is in danger of not surviving? So that might be something to consider. Couple of the things from the CEO panel from the Predict conference that I thought was really good. We had Lori Anderson with International Sign and Aaron Bloodworth with Fern, Greg Odell with Events DC, and that was it. And their suggestions were to break the mold, really experiment right now. Look at how you can change some of those legacy approaches of how we have always done trade shows. Because this is such a devastating impact to our industry, what can we change now? Because now's the time to make that change. But certainly, you know, accepting our errors or moving ahead. Economics, you know, won't work necessarily right now. And being flexible. And what I mean by being flexible is everybody from the venue to the hotels, to your contractors, to the exhibitors, to the attendees, trying to provide as much flexibility as possible right now. Certainly taking a look at all of your force majeure clauses in your contracts is another thing to consider. And then the willingness to take on new roles, I think, is, you know, organizers and planners and things like that. I know that my staff has had to learn, you know, how to produce a virtual/hybrid event. And it's kind of like taking that Swiss Army knife approach. I think that was Lori Anderson with Sign that said that. But certainly now is a time to expand your knowledge and looking at what skills are necessary now moving on into the future. So I am at the end, and I'll pause now to take questions.
Cathy, I think we're, thank you so much. I think we're going to turn it back over to Paula. We went a bit over, but if anybody else has questions, put it in the chat and we'll get it to Cathy.
Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back. I thank you again, everyone, for coming. Cathy, what a great presentation. I'm so thankful that we got to talk to you. I learned so much, especially that people are looking for swag. I did not know that that was something people actually missed out of trade shows. Good to know.
There are companies now that I've had a couple of companies approach me that are now, that's what they're doing, is creating these swag bags that are being mailed out ahead of time. It's great for exhibitors, right, to get people to stop by their online booth. But yeah, we're seeing that. That's another emerging trend that I'm seeing now.
I'm not surprised. I just was surprised that people actually put that in a survey. We all know they go for that. Just surprised that they actually put it in a survey. But thank you very much. Thanks to everyone for being here. I hope everybody at least comes and joins Expo in December for so many reasons, not just that it's great content and great networking and all of that, but it really goes to show everybody that we can still do events safely. So thank you. Thank you to our sponsor, Federal Conference. Thank you to Pathable. Thank you to all our annual sponsors and everyone for joining. I hope to see you in November, and we'll all talk then. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you guys next time.